Welcome to this conversation with Ohio State Representative Jay Edwards. I'm Adrienne Molenkamp, co-president of the League of Women Voters of Athens County. We appreciate Representative Edwards for making the time to participate in this public event. The League of Women Voters of Athens County is a nonpartisan organization dedicated to facilitating active participation in government. Today, we're proud to host this conversation with a current elected official so that constituents can learn about Representative Edwards' current work on behalf of our district. If you want to learn more about the League or support our efforts, please visit us at athensleagueofwomenvoters.org. Our host tonight is Chris Knisely. She's been a member of the League for 25 years and previously served as co-president of our League. She will begin the conversation with 2 questions from the League, then move to topics submitted by the public. We thank everyone for your submissions and have worked to incorporate your ideas into our conversation. We hope to touch on as many topics as possible while still giving Representative Edwards time to provide a detailed answer. Finally, it's my pleasure to introduce Jay Edwards, who represents the 94th District in the Ohio House of Representatives. The 94th District includes all of Meigs County, most of Athens County, and parts of Vinton and Washington counties. Representative Edwards is currently serving in his 3rd term in office. He grew up in Nelsonville and went to Ohio University. He has owned a small business, worked in realty, property investment, and in the medical sales for the drug abuse treatment market. As a representative, he currently serves on 4 House committees, including Economic and Workforce Development, Families, Aging and Human Services, Finance, and Technology and Innovation. Thank you, Representative Edwards, for joining us tonight. Now I turn this event over to Chris.
Thank you, Adrienne. And Representative Edwards, thank you for being with us tonight. Our challenge is going to be to answer as many questions on our list as we possibly can. And I'll start with the first one. Briefly, what are your top 3 legislative priorities for the rest of the legislative year through December?
All right, can you hear me? Give me a nod if you can hear me. Okay, I muted myself there for a second. Well, first off, I just want to say thank you to the League for putting this on. I think it's great. You know, I wish you always pick a date out in time, and I think we passed on the first date or we missed it. I think you guys missed it, I missed it, and then we finally agreed on this date. But I wish I had more time to prepare, to share information, but I've been running around the state today trying to figure things out. So, you know, I'll talk a little bit just about what I'm working on currently. And I guess first off, also, I'd like to mention just, you know, I think we should do this more often. I think this should be a regular thing. I think we should do this in other parts of my district. I think we need to, you know, have conversations, and in reality, these conversations lead to a lot of good. I tell people all the time, I didn't get elected and become experts on everything. I really, every issue I've ever worked on has came from traveling around, showing up to the events, and people telling me or calling me and talking to me about issues that they're having, and it's really enlightening, and sometimes you hear things that just blows your mind that these issues are still going on, or that someone is having this issue with the state, and we get to work right away on those issues. So these opportunities are great to come together and to figure things out together and have a real conversation about what we're working on and what's going on. Too often or not, people tune into the news coverage every night and they learn about federal things, and a lot of times it's bickering and partisanship and all this sort of stuff, and not often enough do we actually talk about what's going on, number one, locally. It's very important, but also at the state level, which is where a lot of stuff happens and a lot of stuff gets passed on a very bipartisan basis. We obviously have our issues that we get in our own corners about, but we do a lot of stuff very bipartisanly in the state. And I think it's something, last I looked, is about 86% of the bills that we pass are done in both a bipartisan manner. And also, if you looked at the numbers, that over 50% of the bills that we pass off the House floor have both a Republican and a Democrat joint sponsor on those bills. And we're very proud of that. That's something that it's not us versus them in Columbus. It's us versus them as it pertains to policy, not partisanship. So that being said, I apologize for not having more time to prepare, but it's an honor to serve as state representative for our part of Ohio. I've been humbled by the support that I've received from Republicans, Democrats, independents throughout the region, and I think it gets back to my message that I very first ran on, and that is, for me, it has never been about what's right and left. It's always been about what's right and wrong. I'm somebody that will show up. Made it a point to show up to as many things as I possibly can, listen to people, talk to them, learn about their organizations, and go to Columbus and never forget where I came from. One thing I do every night, it's kind of may seem quirky or small. I drive home every single night, about an hour, 15, hour and a half, depending on traffic and what time I leave. Most legislators, I'm not knocking them, they choose to stay. Most legislators, some of them live closer to me, they choose to stay. I come home. I never want to forget where I come from. I never want to forget the people I'm representing. And I feel blessed. I don't have anybody can live in a city. I feel blessed as soon as I hit those hills every day when I come home. But, every day I'm in Columbus, I focus on opportunities. That's really what this job is about. And what I think politics and issues are about is opportunities, and making sure that I have a strong voice, bring a strong voice from this region and from Appalachia to the State House, making sure that our voices are heard. Number one, first and foremost for me on any bill is making sure that there's an Appalachian voice in the room. And sometimes, we've had Appalachian voices that just, didn't have we had Appalachian people in the legislature sometimes that don't get their voices heard. If you ask my colleagues, it's not aggressive. It's not an aggressive nature, but it's something that I'm not afraid to stand up and give the swing on things from the Appalachians' point of view. Over the past year, we've worked on things in the state budget. We've cut taxes. We've done things. We've cut taxes while also not restricting social security nets and social services on people. We've reformed school funding. With the passage of the Fair School Funding Plan, which I represent 13 school districts in my current 94th district. That's something that I'm very proud of, and I talked and dealt with all 14 superintendents, treasurers, school boards. It's something that we worked very hard on to make sure the Appalachian voice was included. From where that started to where that ended, we think we have very good prospect, and we went from good to great. And that Fair School Funding Plan. We finally changed the school funding plan in the state of Ohio. We worked on things that are very specific to Southeastern Ohio. We worked to expand broadband. As I said, we worked on job creation, cutting taxes. I think last budget cycle, we had a 3% across the board tax cut. It's something we're very proud about, while also reducing red tape. And a lot of times when it goes on tax cuts, and again, this is mostly federal, but when we talk about tax cuts, we talk about, we're giving tax cuts to the richest class. That's not true in Ohio. We reduce the number of income brackets from 5 to 4 and eliminate anyone in this state from paying taxes unless you earn $25,000 or more a year.
And
So,
Representative Edwards,
yes.
we're going to close
Okay.
this question up. Thank you.
Okay.
And as I hear you, you're talking and your priorities, it's your constituents, the Appalachian voice, and also the finances and representing all of our constituents. So thank you for that answer. Next question is, what is the effect of this year's redistricting process on your district and on Ohio?
Well, it's a good question. It's a crazy thing going on in Columbus, and I think there's a misconception of what my role is in redistricting. I think sometimes people like to conflate their roles and things. In the redistricting process, I really don't have much of a voice on the state legislative maps. That goes to the redistricting commission, which I do not serve on. Those members of that commission are the governor, the secretary of state, the auditor of state, members of the and the other legislative members are the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, Minority Leader in the House, Minority Leader in the Senate. Have I agreed with everything they've done so far? No. If my district holds up the way it currently is, I will have all of Athens County, including Trimble Township, which I'm very happy about. I've always not liked the fact that I didn't represent Trimble Township, but the rest of Athens County. I will represent all of Meigs County, which I currently have. I will represent all of Morgan County, which will be a new part of the district for me. I will not represent any part of Benton County, which it's very unfortunate. I love the folks in Benton County. And I will represent half of Washington County. The only difference in Washington County is I will not represent the city of Marietta, and instead I will represent Barlow Township. So when it comes to that, that's the state level. Unfortunately, I don't have a role in that. On the congressional side, the redistricting commission does not play as big of a role in that. Those maps go to the legislature in the form of a bill, and that bill came before us. I don't even remember when that bill came before us, but here within the last couple of months. I'm proud to admit, again, another example of, in my opening statement, of doing what I believe is right and not just standing on partisan politics. I voted against those maps. I voted in favor with the Democrats, more of the Democrats, against those maps. Here's my reasoning. I didn't think it represented it wasn't anything about any certain current incumbent congressman. It had everything to do with cutting our district up. I would be representing a House district, 120,000 people in a House district with 3 different congressmen. That is really tough, and it's really not fair for our part of the state. We need somebody to represent the Appalachian interests in the state, and the Appalachian interests are much different than other areas. When you tie in the Appalachian interests with the suburbs of Cincinnati, and like one district is that includes Meigs County and Benton County, that, in my opinion, is not good for us. When you include the suburbs of Columbus, in the outskirts of Delaware County, all the way down to Athens and Morgan County, I don't think that's good for us. When you include the suburbs of Youngstown, all the way down to Washington County, Marietta, I don't think that's good for us. So I'm proud to say another example of what I say, given the Appalachian voice on things. I thought it was bad for our area. I didn't stand with my party. I stood with the right policy and voted against those congressional maps. Both of those are up in the court right now. We're trying to figure out what that's going to look like.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yep.
We'll move on to our next question, and this is about elections, and it has 2 parts. And the first one is, would you make a brief comment on whether you feel there is election fraud that needs to be addressed by new legislation? And I'll give you the second part of it, but we can come back to that in a minute. So the first part is, there election fraud you think needs to be addressed by new legislation? Second part of the question is that whether you think the bills proposed in the House that would place new restrictions on early voting and absentee voting and drop boxes are a good or bad idea, and why?
Yeah, so this is a very complex question, but I'll try to do my best to answer. Number one, I think there's always election fraud in every state and probably not every county, but every state in the United States, there's always election fraud, and it's going to happen. The question is, does it impact the results of the election? In Ohio, I think we do things right. At this last election cycle, I was very surprised to learn some states are very partisan when it comes to their election laws. They have 2 Democrats and 1 Republican, or 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat, or all 3. In Ohio, we have 2 and 2. We have a checks and balances system across our boards of elections. We have a Secretary of State that does a great job, and I'm very confident that our elections are ran fairly. Now, does that mean that there isn't fraud that goes on? Absolutely. And some of the worst cases that we're seeing right now are things like big tech. There's questions around big tech. Is big tech taking data and figuring out who to pinpoint on voter stuff? And are they pinpointing certain voters based off partisanship, or based off geography, or based off what they searched in Google today, whatever the case may be? So those are things that I don't think they're very complex on how you fix. And they're things that don't come with simple solutions. What was the second part of your question?
Second part was whether you think that what's been proposed in the House to place restrictions on early voting, absentee voting, and the drop boxes, is that a good idea or a bad idea, and why?
Well, yeah. So the one early voting and absentee voting, I think, are something that's worked in Ohio for years. But one thing I don't think very many newspaper outlets or people talk about in Ohio is we're very liberal on our voting rights. We're more liberal than states like New York, California are on voting rights when it comes to no-fault absentee voting, even prior to the pandemic. When it comes to early voting, how much time we offer a month of early voting that you can walk into your board of elections. Again, no-fault absentee. The part that concerns me is that would require no control over our drop boxes. And let me explain why. There's some members of the legislature that's trying to talk about putting drop boxes all over the county with access to voting. Number one, we didn't have that last election. We saw record numbers, and we saw, pretty good results in Ohio as far as how we didn't think there was a lot of fraud or mishap, but they were just won at the Board of Elections on their property. But let me just bring a scenario that is a problem. You're driving down Court Street, you wreck and go off the road, and you hit the drop box. What happens? What happens to those ballots? What happens if someone goes down, drops a cherry bomb in a drop box? What happens? It would be the only part of our current election system that is not protected, 100% protected. So what I've seen, and the answer to this, and I've had Democrat colleagues that have came on and said, yeah, you're right. That's not correct. What would we do if something happened? Let's say there's vandalism in the middle of the night. Someone, takes off the drop box and runs down the street with it. Yeah, you can make laws saying it's illegal, but what happens to those? What happens to those ballots? We've seen elections. Look at Albany school board vote a couple of years ago came down to one vote. We've seen that more and more even here locally. So every ballot should count. One vote, one person, one vote. That's what we care about. And we don't want to do things that, again, I talked about how Ohio is very secure elections right now. And I think this would provide some insecurity to elections when issues like this happen. The other thing we don't allow in this state is ballot harvesting. We don't allow it. It's not legal. If you have somebody that illegally does that and they're walking by a drop box and they drop in 55 ballots and you catch them, but then they run away, even if you catch the person, how do you know which 55 they just dropped in the bin? There's no way of knowing. Again, it would be the only part of our election system that is absolutely not protected. And it's something that I think we got to tread very carefully on.
Okay. All right. Thank you. The next question has to do with labor unions and what is your position? It's a two-parter once again.
All right.
What is your position on labor unions? And do you have any plans to provide training so that people can get well-paying jobs in our area?
So if there's one thing also people know about me is, I'd say number one is that I show up in my district. And number two is I made a pact when I ran for office. And again, labor unions didn't support me. They supported my opponent. They wouldn't even speak to me when I ran in 2016 for the first time. But I even made it a pact at that time. I will represent the working men and women of this state, period, the end. When it comes to working men and women, I'll stand up on any vote and can explain to the working men and women of the state every vote that I've taken. And, I have a close relationship with labor now, and I tell them all the time, I love having a relationship with you. I love your support. I love your endorsements. But even if you didn't, you understand that I would still support you, because that means something to me. And it's not about the people that run those organizations in Columbus. It's about the people that work in those organizations in Athens and Meigs and Washington and Benton County. So absolutely. Now, the one thing about private labor is they do a great job already with workforce development. We have tons of private contractors that come into Workforce and Economic Development Committee, and they want the state to invest in workforce development things. And I'm not in construction, and I'm not against that. I'm obviously all for that, especially with vocational training in our high schools with juniors and seniors. However, there's one thing that goes unnoticed to those folks, and that is private labor right now already has workforce development. They've been taking that money and reinvesting it, not asking the state for money. They've been doing it privately. And in my opinion, that's a conservative talking point for labor. That is a very conservative viewpoint. They reinvest in their workforce development to make sure that today's workers are training tomorrow's workers. That's something that the state should look at. The other thing that the state has done is we put a lot of things in tech cred, to allow current employees to go back and offer their employees to go back and upskill their training. If you work at a car dealership, you can apply for the state. The state will help employers fund current workforce to go and update their credentials and get higher credentials. That we're actually looking at doing some things like that in the mental health space right now, which I know is a different topic. We'll talk about mental health, I'm sure. Absolutely, we're constantly looking at ways of workforce development. And what's really scary is when you look at construction workers, we're going to be 10,000 people short of the construction needs in this state, let alone the area, within the next 3 to 5 years. These are things that we have to look at. We have to begin investing in. We have to figure out ways of figuring out how to upgrade workers and get the educational needs met. Educational and workforce development training needs met of not just Appalachians, but people across the state.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Next topic we're going to move on to is healthcare. And as seniors are the largest growing population for our area, is there anything being worked on in the state legislature that would strengthen affordable healthcare options, especially for seniors in our area?
Well, as you know, seniors, a lot of times it's more federal when you deal with Medicare. And you know, we get questions all the time that deal with federal issues that aren't really state issues, especially as Medicaid and Medicare mix up. You know, when it comes to Medicare or Medicaid for seniors, you know, we're trying to do things right now to figure that out. One thing, obviously, I serve on the HHS subcommittee. I was missing the opening, the Health and Human Services Subcommittee of Finance. And I learned a great deal this year about healthcare and how healthcare is funded from the state operating budget. This area, just being honest and looking at numbers, this area receives a lot of money in the form of Medicaid, and that's great. We want to fight to protect that. We want to fight to make sure that people that need help need help. When you talk about Medicaid expansion, the people that are voluntarily walking into drug rehabilitation centers right now, not quarter, but voluntarily doing that, 80% of them are Group 8 folks, or what is caught between the end of Medicaid and the beginning of Medicaid and the end of Medicaid expansion. So it's very important that we keep that, and we make sure, especially as we're going to talk about mental health, I'm sure at some point here, how big that is. But the one thing I'm looking at right now, we talk a lot about, are investing in home and community-based services and nursing homes for our elder population. I fought the nursing home industry in the state kind of single-handedly last budget cycle when I started looking at the way in which we fund our nursing homes. Quite frankly, it's appalling the way the state funds nursing homes. I think that we need to fund nursing homes based off of outcomes and quality outcomes. I don't think we should be, you know, right now we kind of have this system where kind of everybody gets the same and all that. And you know, we base it off this arbitrary numbers and they can kind of game the system. I personally think you need to offer more quality. I get emails from constituents or Facebook messages from constituents all the time about how their parent or grandparent is getting mistreated or gotten mistreated in a nursing facility, nursing home. And sometimes it's just an individual, it's not the entire facility. Sometimes it's, you know, it is what it is, but we have to figure out ways to bring our quality of care up. We have to, in workforce development, we have to figure out ways of making sure they're paying their employees more within these facilities. And we have to make sure we expand Medicaid for home and community-based services. People are wanting to age more in their homes and they're wanting to age in nursing homes. So we need to look at that. There are also really cool technological advances taking place in this state of figuring out ways of providing technology into the healthcare space that I've been getting briefed on here recently and on Zoom calls trying to figure out. It looks like the future of that is going to be quite impressive and pretty exciting as far as the quality of care we're able to provide our seniors.
Good, thank you.
Yep.
The next question we have is for a very specific portion of House Bill 6.
Okay.
And just for the audience, that was passed in 2019 and originally subsidized 2 coal-fueled power plants and was repealed by the legislature in 2021. And the Ohio Supreme Court blocked First Energy from continuing to charge customers. But is the legislature doing anything to remove the utility fees that were created under House Bill 6?
Ooh, so not being rude, I don't know who submitted this question, but I want to correct a few things within the question because the question wasn't technically right. The Ohio legislature did not repeal House Bill 6. The Ohio legislature removed House Bill 6, the nuclear subsidies that were going to the nuclear power plants owned by First Energy Solutions or Energy Harbor in northeast and central northern Ohio. So we removed those. What House Bill 6 did, because I have to explain this in order to answer the question, what House Bill 6 did was a few things. Number one, everybody in the state of Ohio from 2011 on paid fees associated that were associated with the renewable portfolio standards. And those dollars meant that Ohio had to buy its generation, from wind and solar. And what that meant was, even if the state didn't produce that wind and solar itself, the state still had to buy it. So if you looked at where we were buying that from, it all went to out-of-state companies that were producing wind and solar. Well, a lot of times those states regulated utilities. They don't have deregulation states, so their ratepayers were paying for them. and then we paid for them and bought them. So everybody's paying for these things. From 2014 to 2017, I think those dates are right. It may be a year off here or there. I think the state paid $205 million as it pertained to renewable portfolio standards. Meanwhile, renewable energy in the state of Ohio that was produced in the state of Ohio was only at around 2 to 3%, maybe less than that. I might be giving them more. I think in 2019 alone, renewable portfolio standards ratepayers paid $65 million. It was an add-on on everyone's bill. Also an add-on on everyone's bill was energy efficiency programs. Energy efficiency programs, 70% of which went to someone's pocket, of which they were running the energy efficiency programs. It didn't actually go into new light bulbs and things like that. I'm all for energy efficiency, money that actually goes to energy efficiency, not to goes to running the energy efficiency program. I think the state paid in 2019 $301 million. So between those two in 2019, I think it's something close to $370 million Ohioans were paying in RPS, renewable portfolio standards, and energy efficiency programs. House Bill 6 got rid of those charges. Now, it did add $1 on everyone's bill for the nuclear program, and I didn't really care about the nuclear program. I cared about reducing people's utility bills. And in doing that, that's what House Bill 6 did, because the charges for the energy efficiency and renewable portfolio standard were more than the $1 that got added on to the. Now, everyone talks about the $1 got added on. No one talks about the money that came off. Now, secondly, was an OVEC charge. And the OVEC is a High Valley Electric Co-op that is a uranium plant in Piketon. And it is a co-op amongst all of our utilities in the state of Ohio. So I think before House Bill 6, AEP, Duke, and DP&L all owned interests or were able to get rate recovery through Public Utilities Commission. I think that dated back to 2017. We're able to get rate recovery that was created for uranium, this power plant. They were struggling. Obviously, the uranium plant went away. They were struggling. They asked to get cost recovery from ratepayers. It was really going to pay off the debt. And 2017, PUCO gave them that ability. Now, that was taken to the Supreme Court by the Ohio Consumer Council, and was upheld 9-0 that they could get rate of recovery on those on Duke, DP&L, Dayton Power Light, and AEP.
Okay, and Representative Edwards, we need maybe 1 or 2 more minutes just to close up on House Bill 6.
Oh, on this question, okay.
On this question, yeah.
And so House Bill 6, the second thing it did on the OVEC charges was it provided cost sharing. So it brought First Energy into the program, and it put caps on the OVEC charges that were already being paid for by ratepayers. So we put caps on, and we increased the number of ratepayers. So for AEP Ohio customers, it was a great deal. It's like saying if you only have the customers of 3 companies paying all this rate of recovery, now we're going to add it to 4. Well, guess what? That cost gets spread out amongst a bunch more people. Now our people are getting a better deal. Not only that, it expanded baseload generation for solar in the state of Ohio. When you look at the Vinton County project, it is very unlikely that project was ever going to come to fruition from Invenergy. House Bill 6 allowed that to come to fruition. It's still in the development stage right now, but it brought up a solar project in my district. So it was a very, very good thing. And on top of that, it also, when you talk about labor was strongly supporting the bill. They had about 4,000 labor jobs up there at the nuclear power plants. It played a role in my decision to support that bill. But really, this was about lowering Ohio electric bills and about expanding baseload generation in the state of Ohio, both from renewable standards. And people can argue that they like the renewable portfolio standards. They didn't work. Whether you like renewable energy or not.
Close up on this one and move on. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thanks for the detailed information on it.
Absolutely.
The next one is about internet service providers, and we've got more than 300,000 households in the state. Approximately 1 million people in Ohio lack access to high-speed internet. And as you know, I mean, you're out in the district all the time, so you see the gaps in that. And we know that there has been some a broadband expansion grant of about $250 million. So our question is, what are we doing, or what are you doing in the Ohio legislature to ensure that we get broadband access here in Southeast Ohio?
Well, you brought it up for me. House Bill 2, the Ohio Residential Broadband Expansion Grant Program. You know, it was a great bill. And again, you don't see a lot of work that takes place on these bills. You see, usually people see the end product, and most of the time they don't even see the bill. They see what the media writes about the bill. But if you see where the bills start to where they end up, you see where I'm really good at representing our area and the changes that I bring to the table. So this bill started, it was more of a middle mile bill. And we tried to bring it to a last mile bill. And if you follow this stuff, people know what that means. But this is a $250 million grant program to expand broadband in this state, and allows broadband providers, mostly the big guys, to go out and try to establish through Development Services Agency, try to get grants to figure out not just middle mile, but last mile broadband infrastructure. And what that means is, when you're that, you know, we hear all the time of people that say it runs right close to my house, but it's just up the road from us. And we know in our area, up the road is a lot more challenging than maybe in suburban or urban areas. We have hills, we have people that live out county and township roads, we have gravel roads, chip and seal road. It's a lot tougher to get to some of these houses. So I think this money is going to go to great use. We're still awaiting the big rollout of it. And then the other thing that goes unmentioned a lot in this conversation is a lot of the federal money, a lot of the stimulus money the state got that we're rolling over into broadband program, we put into this program. So it wasn't just state money. We were able to put some of the federal stimulus money that came to the state into broadband infrastructure money as well that we're awaiting. And we want to make sure that we're doing, we're putting this to use. The one other thing that goes along with broadband is, obviously we want every home to have high-speed broadband. We hear stories all the time of people going to the library and sitting in the parking lot at night, or going to the McDonald's and using their broadband to get their homework done. COVID has exacerbated the issue and really made people really need it even more if they're working from home or on Zoom calls like this right now. The one thing that goes unmentioned in this is we also need cell phone service. I go through areas of my district and don't have cell phone service. When you're talking about public safety, when you're talking about firefighters and police officers that need to communicate with each other, when you're talking about people in times of need, not very many people have landlines anymore. You're out traveling. We need to figure out ways to make, to bring AT&T and Verizon to the table, and whether that's incentives or what that is. We need to have cell phone service in other areas of the state, and specifically right here in Southeastern Ohio.
Okay. Now, and we've got, if you could believe it, we've probably got about 10 more questions. So I'm going to try and pace things at about 2 minutes apiece on these next questions.
Okay.
The next one is about drug abuse, and what are you in the State House doing to address the drug abuse situation in Ohio? And if you could highlight, I know that's a huge question, but maybe if you know 2 programs maybe that might be directed towards Southeast Ohio and making a difference, something to highlight about what you're doing.
2 minutes is tough to talk about this. Far too often we talk about drug abuse in a bubble. We talk about treatment. We talk about, really, I think we got to get to talking about mental health as a whole. When we talk about mental health, it kind of brings it a bigger umbrella. And far too often we have people working in silos and not talking about the big overarching issues. One of the first bills I introduced in the legislature was called Daniel's Law, House Bill 167. We ultimately got that across the finish line. And what that bill set out to do, it ended a little differently, but what it set out to do was not allow for doctors to overprescribe on acute pain, or when someone sprains their ankle, we don't want someone leaving with 50 Oxycontin. We want to make sure we figure that out. We were able to get that across the finish line and within a Senate bill. We also, in this area, I can tell you, I work a ton with the local providers. Behavioral health redesign was something that happened a couple of years ago. It negatively impacted this area of the state. I'm working with people like Robin Harris, with people at the 317 board today in Maxwell, and people here locally, and trying to talk about how we can figure out ways to upgrade worker education as it pertains to mental health. There was an amendment I put in the budget last year that didn't make it through, and we're going to fight to get that done this time through, on allowing health recovery services in Athens, for instance, for their workers to go and get workforce development training. That will up their reimbursement. That allows them to offer more services. That allows them to bring more people into HRS and get them under mental health treatment. So I think that's obviously very important. One more thing, because I got to say this before I get off this topic.
Okay.
People, we all get siloed and live in our lives, and we don't realize how lucky we are. Sometimes we take things for granted. Our NAMI Ohio chapter in Athens is one of the best NAMI Ohio chapters in the state. I deal with NAMI Ohio statewide. I've dealt with NAMI chapters all over. I'm not talking bad about them. What Ann and Tom Walker and Adrian and Tina, now Tina Timmerman over there, have done with NAMI Athens, they're just spectacular to work with, and it's such a blessing to be able to have them. They contact me when there's issues. They talk to me. And we just really get along very well. When we get together, we talk about mental health, and we try to figure things out. And they're such a blessing to work with. We should be very thankful that we have them.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes.
We're going to move on now to some issues about guns. And
Yes.
the state legislature has taken up or passed a number of bills that could be considered pro-gun. Senate Bill 215 passed the Senate and will likely come up for a vote in the House soon. The bill eliminates the 8 hours of gun safety training and the conceal and carry permit requirements, and allows anyone 21 and up to conceal and carry a gun without a permit, so long as they lawfully possess the gun. And the question is what your intended vote is on this piece of legislation.
A bill very similar just passed through the House and is in the Senate. So there were two bills kind of very similar passing each other. And, obviously I voted in favor of that bill. I believe that the Second Amendment affords people rights. And I know it's a difference of opinion probably amongst everybody on this call, and that's fine. I believe that the Second Amendment affords people rights that they have, and that's really it. The difference, it's one of those hot topics that is the difference of opinion amongst many Republicans and Democrats. But I live with it, and I think that's where I stand, and I stand firm. I don't try to work around it. I think the Second Amendment is there for a reason, and this is it.
Maybe a corollary to this then, are you aware of anything being done in the legislature to reduce gun violence?
I think again, to go back to the previous question, I think that when you're talking about gun violence, you have to look at mental health. And so mental health things that we work on, I think, are directly correlated, and we need to do more with mental health in the state, absolutely. But I think Ohio is doing a lot of really good things currently.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Next question is about sustainable development. And as you're well aware, that Appalachia has been used by extractive industries. And do you see a role for sustainable development and green energy industries in our district?
Yes, look at Benton County. Not very many people are talking about, and it seems like a lot of political folks that follow it. Let's face it, the majority of people don't even know what House Bill 6 was. But the people that do, they're not talking a lot about what we did on baseload generation, solar generation in the state within House Bill 6. Again, the Benton County project. We have tons of opportunities. What I thought was so cool about the Benton County project that could be emulated across this entire district was it was reclaimed mine ground. So you think about the energy that came from the coal mines, now it's getting energy from solar panels. I think that's great. And that's something that needs to be emulated. We worked on a project, we're working on a project in another part of my district. I'm not at liberty to discuss. I have some details on that, trying to get the project done or trying to help with a project. It's another solar project. We're really trying hard to get that. When those projects come, it's a win for everybody. It's a win for the landowner. It's a win for the local school district, the township trustees, the county. So absolutely, do I think that needs to take place? But similar to other energy sectors, hopefully there's people that want to focus on Appalachia and bringing those jobs and development to our area.
Okay, great. Next question has to do with House Bill 290, and this is a bill that would allow K through 12 students to take public school funding to private schools. Some people are calling it the backpack bill. Yeah, and what's your position on that particular bill?
You know, it's a touchy subject. You know, I'm obviously a product of public schools. I have about 6 family members that work in public schools down here. You know, it would hurt us. So I would say, as the bill currently stands, I would probably be against it, but I wouldn't just say, hey, I'm against it. I'd go try to work with the sponsors and figure out solutions to make it better. The one issue that I don't think is being taken into account is down here, we don't have a lot of school choice. You know, if I was a kid in Nelsonville right now, where am I going to go to school? I'm going to go to school in Nelsonville, York. You know, there's not a lot of options. We used to have a Christian school. I guess you could be homeschooled, but you know, at the same time, you got to make sure you have broadband, which is another issue. But you know, I get the concept of the bill. I really do. I understand it. And quite frankly, you know, I'm a big fan of public schools, but I also think there are some kids that don't learn in that traditional setting. So I wish we did have more opportunities for some kids to be educated within their house. They might not allow because their mom and dad are at work every day, or they had another alternative option for them to get more, you know, singular treatment. I also hear a lot of times from parents with students with gifted kids that wish that they had more. You know, I didn't take an AP class in high school. When I walked into my first chemistry class, it was eye-opening and shocking to me at Ohio University. So I do think there is an opportunity for us to maybe expand and have some options for some other kids. But again, right as it stands right now, I've got to stand behind firmly public schools, and I don't think it's really it goes unnoticed a lot of times what these school teachers go through. I hear stories all the time of horror stories that these kids are going through that now the teachers are dealing with, and it's a lot of times that goes unnoticed, and it's something that we really need to focus on. I try to share those stories with my fellow legislators.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. We're going to move on to a topic about brine and backing up by a few years to a piece of legislation in 2017 when you served on the House Natural Resource Committee. You voted against House Bill 393, and that would have allowed the sale of brine for road surface applications. And then this year, there's a House Bill 282 that would similarly allow a business to market and sell brine. And so we're asking, what's your position on this year's bill? You had previously voted against it, so would you continue that position?
The funny thing about that bill was, not only did I vote against it, I actually worked with the Environmental Council to figure out amendments to try to put in it. If they'd have got them in, I'd have voted for it, but they didn't get in it, so I voted against it. The funny thing about that is, one of the newspapers locally wrote an article saying that I voted for the bill, even when I voted against it. So I never forget that bill. I never remember the number 393, I think you said. But you know, I absolutely voted against that bill. I will still vote against that bill. I think it's really one company that's pushing this. They're not in Southeast Ohio. They're in Northeast Ohio. And I think somebody wrote an op-ed in the paper. They're probably on this call right now saying they can't believe Republicans supported such a bill. And it wasn't true because I voted against the bill. So I always remember that bill. And you can count on House Bill 282. If it comes up again, I'll vote against it, because again, it's just for one company that's trying to game the system.
Right, right. A corollary question to it was posed, and it said, would you be willing to sponsor or co-sponsor a bill that would remove language in the current law that allows the use of oil and gas drilling waste as de-icer and dust control on the roads? Because it's still in the books that it's allowed.
Yeah, I visited. I absolutely would. I mean, but again, a lot of times I get comments that we're trying to work on a problem that doesn't exist in the district, and I go to ODOT District 10 and then over to the ODOT offices and stuff, and I'm unaware. And somebody out there, I'm not pretending to know everything. Somebody out there knows that it's being used in Southeast Ohio. Please bring it to me, because I've asked this question from my knowledge of this bill a couple years ago. I've asked this question. I could tell you that I'm unaware of any of our ODOT district offices using it currently. I think it's more used on the Turnpike and up in Northeast Ohio. But yeah, I mean,
and I know it's not in the city of Athens either, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So this next one is broad-ranging one, and but I'm going to limit you to the 2 minutes. While in office, what has been your greatest success for our region?
Wow, that's a good question. I'm going to say two. I'm going to say two that have came to mind. Actually, I'm going to say three. I'm sorry, I know where you asked one, but I'm going to say three. The first one is, and this isn't in any order, but the money that we've gotten to both the Winovich School at OU and the Foundation for Appalachia, Ohio, has really gone a long way. And I don't think it's not them. I just don't think enough people know about what they do. And if you don't out there, I'm not going to go through a long spiel explaining it, but please look up what they do. Maybe even if you're interested in your community, start a foundation. Work with them. They'll do all the work for you and help you get it set up. You can go out and raise money and create scholarships or whatever you're interested in. Create something, and they got a lot of money right now to match. We were able to get them $10 million, in each budget cycle in the last two, to really help them and be able to match money. Of course, they needed to be able to match the money with the Joe Burrows Fund. Number two, Bailey's Bike Trail. In an operating budget. For us to be able to get the Bailey's Bike Trail fully funded, the $2 million. I know there was a lot of bickering in Athens between Mayor Patterson and the county commissioners and who was going to pay for what. For us to be able to come in and get $2 million, and I worked well with the county and Mayor Patterson. They were completely unselfish and wanted this to get done and was willing to give up some money to them in order to get it done. I'm so appreciative of that. For us to be able to get that done and get it done in an operational budget, I think that's going to be a great deal to our area. I think the Bailey is tip of the iceberg as far as getting people from outside to our area and the investments that we made in Airbnbs and gas stations, different things. I think there's going to be a ton of development around that, and outside money coming in and spend their tax money. Number three, I would say the money that I've gotten in capital budgets for this area. In 2016, there was a capital budget when I was running the first time. I hadn't been in office. The 94th district got $0 in capital budget funding, zero. My first capital budget, I got $1 million for this region and community projects. My second capital budget, I got over $2 million for community projects. We're coming up on a new one, a new capital budget that we're going to be working on. Hoping to move the ball forward in that. But we've constantly expanded our reach and capital budget for community projects. And when you look at racing and the ball fields and you wonder why they have great lights on them, that was $100,000 that came from the capital money that I was able to get them. And it's so heartwarming to see those kids playing under those lights down there and being able to do that. So we're so happy that of getting capital budget funding money, especially from where we came from. We came from $0, so it's a big step in the right direction.
Good, thank you. I suppose the corollary or the counterpart to that is, while in office, what is one thing you hoped to accomplish for our region but haven't yet? So is there something out there that you're still working on? We know you're working on things, but
Yes.
What's your one hope for?
So, and I'll get all this in 2 minutes. So I know you're probably going to get mad that I'm going here first too. One other thing that we've been very successful at, it's been specific to our region, is the Rural Industrial Park Loan Fund. We've gotten money, $25 million into a fund that just goes to rural Ohio to build industrial parks. Meigs County was the first one to get that money. I think Athens County is going to be next on the list. Those are jobs, economic development. Those are great, expanding tax bases, good all the way around, and it's specific to us. Now, two things, I know I can never just do one, that I really want to get done is we need to do more work on mental health. I know we already talked about it, but we need institutions, that places for, when I see somebody that's struggling with mental health, occasionally I'm driving down the streets in Nelsonville and I see somebody out in the public that I can tell is struggling with mental health. I call the police sometimes, I'll call someone just because I don't want this person to hurt himself or hurt someone. But you think about it, what is a police officer? They have such a tough job. What are they going to do? Are they going to take them to jail? Or are they going to take them? It breaks my heart to think that we need to have support systems immediately, whether it's through law enforcement or someone else that can work with people on mental health to get them into treatment right away. The window is so short. There's still such a big gap there that we have to fix. The one other thing that I'm very passionate about that we have to do something about in this region is volunteer fire departments. Quite frankly, I have a district of 39 different townships. I only have 4 paid departments: Nelsonville, Athens, Beaupre, and Marietta currently. We have to do something. Our public safety is relying on volunteers through these fire departments. If you go to volunteer fire department, you'll see they're a little bit older than they have been in the past. We don't have a lot of young members. Now some do, and there's some great young members. But the trend is they're getting older. We're not getting enough young people in them. We're not keeping enough young people in them. The retention rate is not great. And what happens when we don't have them, when they don't have money to pay for new trucks, which are very expensive, or new buildings or new equipment? We're just going to lose volunteer fire departments. And that's a problem with public safety. And that's something that I'm very passionate about. And I've got a few bills out there I won't dive into because of time constraints, but I've got bills out there to try to fix that. We've got to get some of those bills passed in order to help our volunteers, first responders and volunteers here in Southeast Ohio.
Okay, I've got one other question, and then we're going to close with picking your brain about the best way to get in touch with you. But before we do that, one question. What is one thing you are doing to strengthen civility in public meetings and politics?
Yeah, I wish I could say that I've always been civil. Sometimes we get away from ourselves. And I think it happens to everybody, especially in the world we're living in, social media and all this sort of stuff. But I still come back to, it's not about what's right and left. It's about what's right and wrong. And anyone that's approached me in a manner of working on issues as opposed to partisan attacks, I respect 100%. And it goes unnoticed. I touched on this earlier. In Columbus, we get a lot of stuff done on a bipartisan nature. I have worked very well with the Legislative Black Caucus and showing the similarities between opportunities in Appalachia versus opportunities in urban areas, single family homes, these sorts of issues that we face every single day, and trying to find similarities, commonalities that we can work on. And I think one thing I did when getting elected in 2016 and taking office in 2017, I went around to everybody's office, and Democrats were dumbfounded by that. That's something that we need to do more of. I think there's a famous quote by Ronald Reagan, which I'm sure everyone's going to roll their eyes. I'm bringing his name up on this call, but there's someone that I think he had a famous quote that said, if you're somebody who agrees with me 80% of the time, you're my friend. You're not a 20% traitor. And that's something we got to get back to. We're always going to have differences amongst Republicans or Democrats, but 90% of the issues when we're talking about education and workforce development and opportunities and all these sorts of things, mental health, these are bipartisan. These aren't Republican, Democrat. These are things that even if you disagree with me over here, let's get together and try to work on these issues. And I got to do a better job of it. But everybody needs to do a better job of it. And we need to approach things that we're not just completely attacking. But in today's day and age, I get a lot of attacks too, and I'm sure they're on partisan basis sometimes. And you just got to deal with it.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Our last question is kind of a multi-part, but we'll let you, we've got maybe about 4 minutes here that we wanted to find out from you. What's the most effective way for constituents to contact you about legislation or personal issues? Is it a form on your website, a phone call, an email? And then give us a little bit of insight about once someone does contact you, what are your next steps and what constituents should expect?
So I think there is a misconception on how big this job is versus how small I think it is. It's a local position. And, I can tell you, the mayor of Athens or the county commissioners or the township trustees sometimes have more people that are working for them on constituent issues than I have. I'm a party of me and one person to represent 120,000 people. The best thing to do is fill out the form on our website. On my official website. Now I have people reach me on social media and I try to get back to them. It's something that I know a lot of legislators tell me I'm crazy for even trying because it's so much to keep up with. And I'm in the car and running around trying to figure stuff out. And I have very little time just at home to unwind, but I'm always trying to answer people back. Filling out a form, I actually do read those forms. I take them very, very seriously. My aide takes them very, very seriously. Brian Hall is his name. He's very good at what he does. We do read those. You aren't just sending them off. I know I've thought sometimes no one's ever going to read it. We do read them. We take them very serious and we try to help. So even if we can't help, we try to call people back and talk to them. So, we have records of every single person that has ever called our office. We have records of every single person that has left a voicemail. of every single person that has emailed. I think there's sometimes people go out there and say, I've called in 10 times, and we'll look it up and they haven't called 10 times. We have actual public records to show that. But calling our office or sending in those forms really goes a long way. And sometimes you might not get a call back right away, but we will get back in touch with you in some way or fashion if it's about a specific issue that you or your family or someone is struggling with, especially. If you're just sending your thoughts on a bill or something and we find it's extremely inappropriate, and we get a lot of those, or just extremely partisan, sometimes we're moving right along to help the person get their unemployment benefits as opposed to answering, an attack. But we do get back to people and try to be very fair and make sure people's voices are being heard in times of need.
Sure, I appreciate that. And
Yes.
I know that you mentioned that you come home every night.
Yes.
And
Yes.
are there ever days that you're allowed to be, and I'm sure there are events out in the region, but are there ever times when constituents might be able to find you on a regular basis out in the district? Or is there any place that, we should just keep track of your schedule?
If people want to message and ask or see, where I a lot of times on the events, I let people know that I'm showing up sometimes, but
Okay.
if people, I need to get back to some regularly scheduled office hours. It's tough when we're in Columbus so much and running around to events. You kind of have to figure out, and a lot of times you don't know the schedule for next week until Monday or the weekend. So it's really tough to schedule those things far out. But if you want to get in touch with me, I've had people recently, they send me a message. I'd like to sit down and talk with you. Sometimes the next day I'm sitting at the OUN drinking coffee with them. So if people want to message me and try to reach out and get together one-on-one and have a productive conversation, you can do it if you're just wanting to, attack on positions or whatever, try to change my mind on the position, that's fine. But if you really want to talk about state policy and trying to get something done, and you or your family or someone is in need and you need help and you think it's a state issue that I can help with, please reach out to me and we'll sit down or talk on the phone and try to get you help.
Okay, great. Well, we made it through the list.
Yes.
Of questions. So I appreciate your responding to with the occasional cutoffs that I made. And
Yes.
on behalf of the Athens County League of Women Voters, we'd like to thank you, Representative
Absolutely.
Edwards, for taking the time. We greatly appreciate it, for answering the questions. And I would agree. I think if more of these could happen in other places throughout the county, that would be wonderful. To all of our listeners, we'd like to encourage you to remember 2 dates that are coming up. We've got April 4th to register to vote. And then May 3rd, of course, is a very important day for voting this spring. And there'll be, there are a fair amount of local issues that are important for people to be voting on. And we encourage everybody to do that. And do you have one last comment, Representative
I do.
Edwards?
We didn't talk about a couple of things that I think is important. I'm not going to talk about them. I just want to bring up the topics and say we should talk about them.
Okay.
We need to talk about dark money in politics. We saw it in the House Bill 6, I guess, scandal at this point. We got to figure out what we're going to do about dark money. It's really tough on the federal basis because of Citizens United, and the Supreme Court has upheld First Amendment rights. And I'm obviously a big constitutional guy. Don't want to trample on someone's First Amendment rights. We've got to do something on dark money, though. A lot of times it's talked about how it was portrayed in House Bill 6. What's not talked to influence House Bill 6, a lot's not talked about are the people that were against House Bill 6 also was a dark money, big $1 million dark money groups. It's everything right now. We got to talk about dark money. And I guess I'll leave with one question for the audience that doesn't have an answer. It's just something to think about. If you're me, if you're a state representative, put yourself as you're a state representative. How do you represent your district? Do you represent and campaign on you're a good guy, and when issues come up and you're going to vote on an issue that may be divisive, a pro-life issue or a pro-gun issue or anti-gun issue or whatever, do you vote on the way you believe, or do you vote with what you think the majority of your district wants? I'm not sure I've ever heard a real good answer on that question, but it's something to think about out there. So I just want to throw that out there.
Okay, well, thanks for leaving us with something to think about. We greatly appreciate your time, and it's 8 o'clock. And so we'll say good evening to everyone. Thank you so
Thank you.
much again. Good night.